Coming up, GA is off the hot seat. Sort of. Fly your plane with just your brain? And what's happening in Sebring this week? And putting your airplane through its paces. AOPA Live This Week begins in just a moment.
This edition of AOPA Live This Week is sponsored by Bank of America, helping pilots offset the cost of flying with the AOPA Bank of America Cash Rewards credit card.
Well, GA is off the list, sort of. Hello everyone, I'm Warren Morningstar, sitting in this week for Tom Haynes. Thanks for watching. Well, last year, general aviation safety was on the National Transportation Safety Board's most wanted list for improvement. This year, the NTSB has narrowed the focus to something that's perhaps more actionable in the short term.
Our most wanted list for 2014 covers all modes of transportation. There are 4 new issue areas that we are highlighting: helicopter safety, passenger vessel safety, safety in mass transit, and improved occupant protection. And a 5th, general aviation safety. We're sharpening our focus this year to improve awareness of weather hazards.
I would say it is good news that general aviation as an entirety is now off the NTSB's top 10 most wanted list. We have moved into an area of more focus, which is general aviation weather being still a key source of accidents. And the NTSB now seems to agree with us that this is an area where better forecasting would help pilots to make better decisions. And if we can get that information flow going, both in flight and pre-flight, then hopefully we can reduce the accident rate even further.
NTSB wants more pilot training on how to get and to understand hazardous weather information. And it wants both pilots and controllers to have better real-time weather information. And that includes something pilots can do right now.
Another key area is going to be pilot reports, and this is something that the Air Safety Institute has been focused on for a long time, and that is if you see something, please let somebody know on the ground that the weather is other than what was expected, or that it was as expected.
The AOPA Air Safety Institute has been active improving GA safety for 64 years, successfully, we might add. Since its founding in 1950, the GA accident rate has declined some 85%. Check out the Air Safety Institute's resources to help you improve your skill in safety at aopa.org. Click on the Education tab. Well, as we record this, the House has just passed the omnibus funding bill, and the Senate is expected to follow suit. Some $1.1 trillion to fund federal stuff through the end of September. For our little piece of the pie, $15.6 billion for the FAA. Now that's up a little from 2013. User fees prohibited again. Contract towers funded. Money for aircraft certification, airport improvement, and unleaded avgas research. And there may be some progress, finally, on the AOPA EAA third-class medical petition. FAA Administrator Michael Huerta sent a letter of apology to my boss, AOPA President Mark Baker. That letter, after a frank meeting between the two last month. Now, the petition has been in the mill for almost 2 years without an official response, and Huerta apologized for the delay and promised that the agency was actively evaluating the proposal.
It's encouraging news, and it shows that our advocacy is effective. We've got the administrator's attention. Now is the time to actually step on the gas, not let up on it, and so we continue our efforts to lobby to get passage of not only legislation that would support our petition or some version of our petition, but also to get the FAA to act on our petition.
Both the AOPA EAA petition and the legislation would allow pilots to fly a lot of common GA aircraft without a medical certificate. No word yet on when the FAA might respond to the actual petition. Meanwhile, Representative Todd Rokita is gathering more co-sponsors for his legislation to allow pilots to use a driver's license for a medical certificate. And Secretary of Transportation Anthony Fox has appointed 10 new members to the FAA Management Advisory Council. The council advises the agency on management, policy, spending, and regulatory matters. New members include former AOPA President Craig Fuller and former FAA Administrator Jane Garvey. Okay, so let's get outside of the Beltway and turn to something fun, like putting an airplane through its paces. And not just any airplane, your airplane. The AOPA Sweepstakes Debonair. AOPA pilot editor-at-large Tom Horn keeps it in good order for you. He wanted to make everyone else jealous for you, so he filed this report on how great it is to fly.
Well, this is Tom Horn here with the Debonair Sweepstakes airplane, 75 Yankee Romeo. We're taking it out on a flight today to see how it handles, give it a little exercise.
We want to put the airplane through its paces. Let's start with an approach to landing stall. I've got the gear and flaps down, and the power's at idle.
There it is. Not much to it, eh? So I think we're going to do some steep turns here, just to give you an idea of how it behaves. Let me use my heading bug as a reference. And we'll do a steep turn to the left. How's that?
Boarding landing.
Not much back pressure needed. It's a very easy airplane to fly. It's not rudder hungry, except in the climb, of course.
We've seen how it does at slow speeds and high bank angles. Now let's do some lazy eights, a fun coordination maneuver in which you explore how each of the controls feel.
Okay, the first thing for the lazy eight is you have to pick a reference point, and we'll make that off our wing. When we roll out of the two halves of the eight, that will be on our wingtip, if everything works out right. So what you do is you're gonna pitch up and roll into check ride says 30 degrees, but that's kind of boring, eh? Come around the top, minimum airspeed at the top, go over to the other side, roll out, and head on the downside of the first half of the eight. And then when we're done with that half of the eight, our reference point should be off our wingtip on the other side, and there it is. How about that? Well, I hope you got a sense, at least, of some of the airplane's capabilities, how easily it handles, how docile it is, how light the controls are, and how capable it is. And it handles very well through a wide range of envelopes. Tom Horn, AOPA Live.
The Debonair is on its way to the engine shop this week. Look for it at Sun and Fun in April. But just 2 weeks away, Super Bowl XLVII. The FAA has just released a flight advisory that details what the TFR will be like. Now, MetLife Stadium is just a mile away from Teterboro Airport. It will be closed during the game, but, it's not like you could find any place to park there anyhow. And, of course, the 30-mile ring. You can fly to and from airports inside the ring on a flight plan, and if you're squawking and talking. No transitions through the airspace, though, and that includes the Hudson River corridor. As we like to say, and so we do, check NOTAMs. And speaking of the Hudson River, it's been 5 years already since the miracle on the Hudson. You remember that. The U.S. Airways Flight 1549 hit a flock of Canada geese just after takeoff. Both engines lost power, and Captain Chesley Sullenberger made a dead stick landing right on the Hudson River. All 155 people survived, and one of them became a GA pilot shortly after. We talked to him about the experience.
I saw that we were over the river, and I thought immediately that, okay, he's going for Newark, that we're going to be landing in Newark. Mm-hmm. Well, I realized then we were kind of below the Jersey Cliffs and that we were going to be landing in the Hudson. We hit, everybody goes forward, and then we hit again and again. And when the tail of the plane, the middle, and the front of the plane hit the water, and then we made a sharp left-hand turn, and that's when I was worried that we were going to flip. But we just settled down into the water, and everybody sat there for probably a second and a half, maybe 2 seconds. And we were waiting for the next thing to happen, because up until this point, we didn't have any control. Now it was time for us to take control, and we just didn't think about it and didn't realize it immediately. But then somebody started yelling, open the doors, open the doors. They did, and I have to tell you, when they opened that door and threw it out of the plane and that light came in, that was such a tremendous amount of relief that came over most everybody in the plane. And if there was ever such a thing as a heavenly light, that was a heavenly light.
You can see the full interview on AOPALive.org. Just search Miracle on the Hudson. And coming up after the break, a preview of the Light Sport Expo in Sebring and flying your plane on brain power alone. AOPA Live This Week continues right after this.
Before earning enough cash back from Bank of America to help pay for the road trip. Before they earned 1% back on all purchases, everywhere, every time, and 2% back at the grocery store. Even before earning 3% back on gas, with no hoops to jump through. The Garcias hit the road with their Bank AmeriCard Cash Rewards credit card and shortened the distance between each other. That's the majesty of rewarding connections. Apply online or at a Bank of America near you.
Welcome back. You're watching AOPA Live This Week. I'm Warren Morningstar, sitting in for Tom Haynes. Well, the FAA has asked a federal judge to dismiss the Santa Monica City lawsuit. The city wants the court to give it clear title to the airport so it can close it. The feds say the city is obligated to keep operating the airport under multiple agreements the city has signed with the federal government since 1948. The city can now respond to the FAA's arguments. Then the judge will decide whether to dismiss or proceed to trial. And AOPA is telling the FAA not to proceed with its new training standards for using a simulator and training for an instrument rating. The new standards would only allow 10 hours of simulator time to be logged towards the rating instead of the current 20 hours in an approved training device.
We think it's significantly going to increase the cost of training, it's going to significantly reduce safety, and it's going to stymie innovation and thinking outside the box for training manufacturers. So in the end, it's not how you were taught, it's what you learned and what you demonstrate to the examiner.
AOPA thinks simulators are cost-effective and can create situations a pilot is unlikely to encounter flying under the hood. By the way, the AOPA J you see in the video here is a great training device, but it hasn't been approved for logging IFR time. Well, Honeywell has a long history of research and development, and they opened their labs to our cameras to demonstrate some of the things they are working on. Now, can you imagine this? Controlling an airplane with just your thoughts? Think about it. The first thing to note, this is still very experimental and mostly academic. Now, you're watching video provided to AOPA Live by Honeywell of a simulator experiment. The pilot is fitted with a brainwave monitor. They look at the flashing box that means left. The airplane goes left. To level it out, they look at the right turn box. The brainwaves acting as the flight control inputs.
And these commands could be tied to functions on the autopilot or any other system. And so if the pilot wants to invoke a particular command like turn left, all they have to do is glance at a command that's tied to the left turn command on the autopilot, and the aircraft responds by turning. So the advantage is that the pilot really doesn't have to use their hands to control this device or the autopilot. They simply have to glance at the command they wish to invoke, and it's invoked in a hands-free way. A lot of our systems are used by people in some of the most challenging contexts, on the battlefield, in the air, in advanced flight decks. We also see this technology being used by firefighters. And one of the common elements in all these tasks is that people are interacting with computer systems.
The neural technology research is geared at being able to detect areas where people interacting with the computer system are vulnerable to error or overload. The technology is purely experimental at this point. Well, sooner or later, next-gen technology will be coming to your panel. That is, if you want to fly in busy airspace. The federal plan is to eventually require ADS-B in your airplane to fly in Class Bravo airspace. Now, the Aircraft Electronics Association has just announced a partnership with Nexa Capital Partners to eventually provide loans for aircraft owners to buy and install specific next-gen equipment. Details of the program are still pending. However, if you want to buy any kind of avionics, you can get financing right now through AOPA Aviation Finance, and they'll find you the best deal from a variety of financial institutions. You can find out more at finance.aopa.org. And finally, the first major aviation gathering of the year is getting underway as we record this. The U.S. Sport Aviation Expo opens this week in Sebring, Florida, and that's where we find AOPA Live's Paul Harrop. Paul, what's going down there in the Florida sunshine?
Well, Warren, the sun's going down here on the last day of preparations before the show opens up. A lot of aircraft have been flying in. We've seen a number of things land and come get positioned. Take a look. We got the Czech Sport Cruiser, the SAM LS, a Legend Cub, and a Sea Ray down beyond that. But in addition to all the airplanes that are here, there is a real sense of excitement because this is the 10th year of the U.S. Sport Aviation Expo.
You know, it's the place to come and compare aircraft. They're all here.
This show is heavy hitting for the light sport market.
So if you're looking for an LSA or whatever kind of aircraft you're looking for, it's easy to walk along, compare.
From the Warbird-inspired SAM LS to the sleek Sirius, many different models are here to check out hands-on.
The key is getting the demo flights. Our airways are dedicated to the demo flights every day, 9 to 5.
There's a lot going on down on the ground, too. Exhibitors are excited to please perusing pilots. Among them, AOPA Communications Coordinator Kristen Seaman.
It's been several years since we've had a presence at the U.S. Sport Aviation Expo. It's their 10-year anniversary, so we're happy to be here. They're happy to have us. This is a great way for us to show our support for grassroots and the lighter end of aviation, not to mention the third-class medical petition that we're teaming with EAA on for allowing more pilots to fly with their driver's license like many of the pilots do here.
This year's expo is dedicated to home builders and kit builders. And to help those pilots, show director Jana Phillips says they have some new programs this year.
We've got almost 40 forums this year, educational forums. In addition to those, we have a first ever workshop, so hands-on this year, and that's important.
It's all part of a celebration 10 years in the making.
And we have a little bit of breaking aviation news from the light sport world right now. This is the Super Patrol LS. It just got its certification yesterday. You can see it is a amphibious biplane. We're going to talk to the company and see what it's all about. Look for that and other news from the U.S. Sport Aviation Expo right here in Sebring, Florida next week. Warren, back to you.
Well, thanks, Paul. Looking forward to your stories next week from Sebring. And that's it for AOPA Live this week. Remember, you can watch us on all your screens, computer, smartphone, big TV. Tom will be back next week. I'm Warren Morningstar, and thanks for watching.